What you see here is the roof of the Richland Mall in Columbia, South Carolina. As you might have guessed, there were high expectations for what was originally one of the most upscale malls in South Carolina. Now, however, the mall stands as a sad shell of what it once was. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, this is Doomie Grunt. We're about to get a closer look at Richland Mall, one of the deadest malls in South Carolina. is so hot up here, guys. Hey guys, this is Doomie Grunt cutting in. I just want to say that this mall was great, but it is absolutely huge, so I decided I'll stagger my voice commentary over the next part of the video.
Coming soon to own on DVD and video.
So we're up here on the roof, and we just got to look at the movie theater, which is accessible from the roof only, so you don't have to go into the mall. So if the mall itself were to close, the theater would have the option to remain open. Listen carefully to my footsteps. These tiles are so old, they're so neglected that they're starting to crack underneath my feet. I suppose being left out in the sun and the rain for 30 years would make you crack under pressure as well. See, I told you Belk was still open. And the fact that Belk is still here at this mall, even though they've pulled out of most of the other malls in Columbia, is a very good point for this mall. It shows that there's probably still hope for this mall after all, because Belk is still a very successful department store, and there must be something about the area that's keeping them here, or maybe some kind of agreement with the owners. I don't know. The mall also seems to be holding on with Barnes & Noble, which is downstairs. And Barnes & Noble is another interesting store to see in a dead mall, because usually Barnes & Noble is either long gone when the mall starts to fail, or they're usually as an out parcel. So seeing it as a sort of junior anchor is also pretty amazing for this mall. Oh yeah, and this used to be the fountain down below, which is now completely dry, unfortunately. Would have been nice to see that fountain going. And I'm not sure what this corridor used to be, but now it's like completely walled off for the call center that moved in earlier, so if anyone was a veteran of this mall, why not tell me what used to be here? Over there you can see me in the mirror way off in the distance, and this must have been a candy shop or whatever it was. Used to sell jelly beans. Here you can see a hole in the ceiling, which is unfortunate for this mall. Which is a shame too, because this is a very pretty mall in my opinion. If its fortunes were to turn around, I'd love to see the owners try and make necessary repairs and, you know, try to preserve this mall, because it looks nice and there's a lot of potential for an otherwise empty building like this. Also over here you can see what used to be Dillard's, which in turn used to be Bonwit Teller. And downstairs there's a really interesting thing in front of Dillard's, which we'll get to later on. Over there in that brightened up storefront, you can see a business where you can walk in, sit down, have a glass of wine, and paint a canvas, which I thought was actually pretty cool. If I weren't alone, I'd probably go in and do that myself. And back over here by Belk, you can see a Lens Crafters, and opposite from it was a sort of salon or a barber shop, both of which are still going, so that's pretty good for this mall at least. And there's Barnes & Noble, which is still going, surprisingly. And then over here to the right, surprisingly, is Gymboree, which unfortunately is on its way out. So that's kind of sad, but another thing that's sad are these spots in the ceiling and these buckets on the floor. Very sad sight indeed. There's also these plants throughout the mall. Most of the planters are empty, but the few that do have plants, they're in pretty rough shape as well. But then here was this cool looking race car, which I'm not sure if it's real or if it's just a replica, but either way it was still pretty cool to see. So here we're coming up to the little surprise in front of Dillard's on the lower level, which is a setup of ping pong tables. Now when I was here there wasn't anybody manning the tables, and then there's like a note saying that these games are usually held on weekends around the evening, so I guess if you're in the area and you're alright with a ping pong paddle, why not come down to Richland Mall? It's true. Duct tape can fix anything. In this case, floor tiles. As we're making our way out of this mall, I'll share a little more info about it. The developer behind this mall is actually the same guy who is responsible for the Forest Fair Mall in Cincinnati, Ohio. Both of these malls were designed to be classy and high-end, and interestingly enough, both of them failed. You can imagine all the money that went into malls like these and how far they've fallen since. And now, here we are in a mall that's but a mere shell of what it once was. That said, I'm kind of surprised to see this mall is still going. I'm not sure what the current owners have in mind for this mall, but I hope that they're successful in bringing this mall back to its feet. I'm also interested in coming back to see this mall sometime in the future, and perhaps even do a nighttime video on it, for better or for worse. If you're interested in that, do let me know and I just might do it. Until then, if you enjoyed this video, why not pass it around? If you want to see more content like this in the future, do subscribe. And if you want to help support me in my travels to these places, do pitch in $1 on Patreon. Until then, this is Doomie Grunt, wishing you guys a good night.